Hello and welcome back to Continental Club, where we discuss the hottest topics in European football. Happy Friday, everyone. I'm joined by Henry Hill and Michael McCubs. And Henry, I wanted to start with you because a lot of people were asking me in the comments of UCL Review yesterday, Vinicius Junior, man, he turned up big time.
Yeah, it is one of those where your heart sinks when you see this goal scorer. Yeah, you know what? Fair play. Everyone's allowed a good game every now and then, even him. No, he. To be fair, I think we all suggested that Real Madrid could do a job on Liverpool, and he really did turn up, and he took his finishes really well, and that's the most reassuring thing. But I still stand by, like, he needs to do that more often. It's all well and good turning up in one game, but yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about another player today in a less than positive context, who I've been banging the drum for since he made a move. So it's looking like a difficult week for me, and certainly it's going to be
in the mud.
Yeah, exactly. And in the comments, come at me. I'm ready for it.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, as you say, it's nothing personal. And I think you were right in calling for more regular output from him, not necessarily being too harsh there. McCubs, how's your week been? You've enjoyed the Champions League offerings?
Yeah, I've loved the Champions League. I think I can't remember the last time the first leg of a quarter-final was just so good in multiple games. Obviously, the Real Madrid-Liverpool game was fascinating. And then Bayern Munich, PSG last night, obviously we filmed this on a Thursday, it was just best Champions League game I've seen in so long. And yeah, it very much felt like a second leg, just both teams going balls to the walls. Midfield's hardly existent in a defensive sense. It was just, great to see two top quality teams also just kind of letting loose. So been very entertained.
Oh, good stuff. Yeah, you definitely got the lucky side of last night's fixtures. I was watching FC Porto versus Chelsea, but some moments of quality in that as well. But anyway, let's get into today's episode because we've got a banging show lined up for you today. Because at Swagato Sarkar 99 has asked, who has been the worst signing of the season? Now, obviously, we're going to leave Premier League signings alone. We're also going to leave the Pjanic-Arta swap deal alone, despite the fact that I think that's probably clearly the worst signing from both sides, to be honest. But we've talked about that to death. We're also not going to cover the Schalke January deals, the Mustafi, the Kolasinacs, the Huntelaars, because we've talked about that as well, and we've got a show coming out on Schalke, or a video I should say, in the next couple of weeks as well. So we're going to try and focus on the big European deals that went wrong. And McCubs, we're going to kick off with a player at Inter Milan who are having a spectacular season, Inter Milan, but one signing in Arturo Vidal, who probably, as we suspected, hasn't really worked out.
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny one here because we've got a lot of candidates here. None of them cost a huge amount of money because a lot of the big clubs didn't really take the kind of risks that they usually take last summer, did they? But nevertheless, Arturo Vidal has already proved quite costly to Inter in some ways. He joined for €1 million back in September from Barcelona. He's on a reported €5 million a year. And he hasn't really featured much, especially since the turn of the year. Obviously, he's reunited with Antonio Conte, who really kind of made him as a player at Juve, didn't they? They won 3 titles together. He featured in one of the best midfields we've seen in Italian football in the last 20 years, alongside Pogba, alongside Marchisio, alongside Andrea Pirlo. But yeah, this season he hasn't really had the effect that we would have expected of him. Last term I think he was one of Barcelona's best players. He really kind of led the press in the midfield, worked really hard. Just got the kind of engine that most 33-year-olds have lost by this point. But this term he ranks 11th in the squad for minutes. He's only got 1 goal and 1 assist. He's missed 9 games through injury. And he's only played 152 minutes across their last 9 league games, all of which Inter have won. So, he's lost his place essentially in the side. Because at the start of the season he was pretty much ever present. But now Christian Eriksen is very much back in the mix, and his numbers have dropped off as well. I mean, last season he was averaging nearly 2 tackles a game. That's come down to 1.2. Key passes have dropped to below 1. That's from 1.2 last term. He's not really dribbling at all anymore. Not that that was necessarily a part of his game before, but it shows that he's not really doing much on the ball compared to before. And even his work rate has dropped off. 26 pressures per game last term has come down to 23. I think that's probably understandable. in an Inter side which doesn't press in the same way that Barcelona do. But yeah, generally it's just not been money well spent, not been the kind of bargain kind of buy that we perhaps saw it as last summer. And he's had some pretty poor moments as well. For example, like in the Real Madrid game in the Champions League groups, got himself sent off with 2 yellow cards in 10 seconds. Bit of a moment of madness that left them with 10 men for the majority of that game. I think he got sent off at something like the 33rd minute, and then was missing for their final two group games. So, things like that, which obviously cost Inter dearly because they, crashed out, didn't even get into the Europa League, did they? And he's still got 1 year remaining on this deal. Inter could end up spending over 10 million euros on a player who's looks quite past it at the moment, and really needs to get back into Antonio Conte's good books. And obviously in the context of Inter's potential financial turmoil, which could come to a head this summer, they'll look back at this as a very poor investment indeed.
Yeah, I think it's a very good shout. And that was actually suggested by @BTechWarnock1. I'm going to try and give out all the suggestions because basically I put out a tweet on Wednesday as well before this, and I got close to 100 replies. You guys got really engaged with it. So thanks to @BTechWarnock1 for suggesting that one. Arturo Vidal, very worthy inclusion. But let's move over to a player in Germany, in Thomas Meunier, who was suggested by @Rusinho, Henry, because you were a big fan of this deal at the time, but I think it's fair to say it hasn't necessarily gone as well as you maybe thought.
Yeah, I think to say this is the worst deal is a little bit harsh. I think he came on a free transfer. He earns about £52,000 per week, so he's not breaking the bank for Dortmund in that regard. And let's remember, at PSG, he was a solid addition to their squad. I remember arguing that they scored more and conceded fewer when he did play. He's a very kind of excellent professional, 29 years old. However, I happily admit that it really hasn't quite gone to plan since arriving at Dortmund. It was always going to be difficult replacing Achraf Hakimi, wasn't it? And he was just unbelievable for Dortmund, and to be fair, has continued that quality for Inter Milan this year. He scored 9 goals and 10 assists in 41 league and UCL games for Dortmund as they finished second, 13 points behind Bayern in 2019-20. So that's always a really difficult mantle to try and step up to. But, he's missed 9 games of injury so far this year, Thomas Meunier. He's only started 16 in the league. 1 goal and 1 assist isn't really good enough. His numbers aren't shocking. 2.5 tackles and interceptions. But then 0.6 shots and 0.9 key passes. That's okay. 1 dribble, but obviously the end product just simply hasn't been there this year. He's got 0.14 expected goals and assists per 90. And that's compared to Hakimi's 0.35 in 1920. They are different players. He obviously doesn't have the explosive pace that Hakimi has. And Hakimi in many ways almost plays as a right winger sometimes. It's sort of that kind of Marcos Alonso effect where you almost forget sometimes that he's actually meant to be a wing back, but he is. But yeah, Thomas Meunier, I was reading actually that he's had to shut down his social media because he's had a lot of abuse for a tackle that he put on Eden Hazard, I think during, it was either this year or last year. Apparently a lot of people blame Meunier for Hazard's injury issues that stand at the moment now. So he's had a bit of difficulty online, which we know can actually affect players quite badly. But, very little attacking contribution. Part of a back line that has conceded 39 league goals. That's the most in the top 7 in the Bundesliga. And he's been pitched to the right back slot by Mathieu Morey, the sort of young Spanish fullback recently playing for Dortmund. You saw him start against Manchester City in midweek as well. But I stand by that it was a good decision to bring him in. 4 years with PSG, quality professional. It just hasn't really worked out. But I don't think this is like a devastating issue for Dortmund to have to swallow. But I completely accept why he is featured on this list.
Yeah, it hasn't been great, but as you say, free transfer, not the worst deal necessarily. And sometimes in a COVID-affected market, you've got to make smart deals at the time. They saw he was available. If they want him for 1 or 2 years while Murray comes through, potentially not the worst deal, and he definitely is not solely at fault for Dortmund's defensive woes this year. Roman Bürki, who has been dropped recently, has been appalling once again. I've been saying it for a number of years, despite the fact that for about 18 months I used to get abuse in the comments being like, don't be so harsh on Bürki. He's not good enough for Dortmund. Neither has Hitz either. And I think Akanji has had a very mediocre campaign as well. So problems all over the Dortmund backline. Let's move over to a player in Italy, in Victor Osimhen, who was suggested by a number of people, including Feginator. Now, in that Arturo Vidal and Thomas Meunier were, £1 million and free, Osimhen deserves his inclusion on the basis that he cost so much money. Obviously, he was signed from Lille, the 22-year-old, for 70 million euros, potentially rising to 80 million euros. And if you judge it on the season so far, it has to go down as a mistake. He's missed 23 games with 3 separate issues, limiting him to just 20 appearances so far, in which he has scored 4 and assisted 1. He's only been fit to play 870 league minutes. This is really not good. That's 18th in the Napoli squad. Now, obviously, that's not Osimhen's fault. He obviously contracted COVID and had a couple of other issues as well. So, I'm not holding that against him. But for that amount of money, Gattuso would have wanted to see a greater return. But his numbers actually have been pretty good when he has played. His shots per 90 have gone from 3.2 to 2.7, which isn't too bad. But his key passes have gone to over 1.2 per game as well. His shot accuracy is hovering around the high 30s as well. So he's not playing too badly. And he got a goal against Crotone last weekend in a 4-3 victory. I was watching the highlights of that yesterday. Another excellent, really entertaining Napoli game. They attack so well, but really without Koulibaly in that backline, struggle defensively. And Osimhen was really lively in that game again. It was great to see him back on the score sheet. And his 0.7 expected goals and assists per 90 is still pretty solid. And he scored 2 in his last 4 games for the club. So I'm sure there is plenty of time for him to finish the season strongly. They'll obviously be disappointed to have lost to Juventus last night. I haven't watched the highlights of that yet because I was obviously watching the Champions League. But that was a blow for Napoli. Really want them to finish ahead of Juve this year, personally at least. So Osimhen deserves his inclusion on that basis. But yeah, hopefully it can improve for him. McCubs, let's talk about another player in Italy in Mario Mandzukic, who was suggested by our favourite AC Milan fan, Menez18, because short-term deal, but it hasn't gone well at all so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a bit of a blow, isn't it? I think we can trust at Menez 18 when he's slagging off his own club, but yeah, I mean, they signed him on that 6-month deal at the end of January, didn't they? Hadn't played since terminating his contract with Qatari side Al Duhail in July 2020. Only played 10 games there. Obviously joined them in January 2020 after being left out of the Juve Champions League squad by Maurizio Sarri. So yeah, lots changed in the last year. But yeah, he's only featured 5 times for Milan. Picked up a muscle injury in early February. Hasn't featured since 13th of February. So coming on over 2 months now that he's not featured at all. 76 minutes in Serie A. He's managed 1 shot in that time. I think it's one of those things. Like, I think clubs, especially when they go for the title, will look to kind of find cheap reinforcements. Obviously, they thought that Mandzukic's experience, especially in Serie A title run-ins, would have been useful. He would have been a good backup to Zlatan and Rebic. They don't really have anyone who can fill in there. I mean, I guess Leao has played there a bit, but they prefer to use him off the left, don't they? So I can kind of understand why they went for him, but equally they could have maybe been a little bit more creative. They could have maybe stuck their neck out a little bit more with a bit more of an ambitious signing, perhaps. For example, Mateta, who went to Crystal Palace on loan in January. Maybe they could have sorted out something for him. He's obviously a more proven scorer in the recent, this season at least, with what he was doing at Mainz. I'm trying to think of other
Musa Dembele maybe
who moved in. Musa Dembele as well. Yeah, that's true actually. Yeah, because of course he went to Atleti. So there were players out there, available on short-term deals, who AC Milan could have looked at, and in the 2 months since Mandzukic has arrived, Inter have sped away. And it's not to say that if they had gotten in, a more solid option, that Inter wouldn't still be ahead now. But I don't think they'd be quite as far ahead as they are. So yeah, I think Mandzukic will go down as a pretty poor move all round.
Yeah, I mean it was so risky to sign him at his age, having not played for 6 months, having played very little football, because I think he only played very few games in Qatar before deciding enough was enough. Yeah. So he just hadn't had a lot of football in the last 2-3 years, and it was always ambitious for it to work out, but they rolled the dice and it hasn't quite come off. But anyway, let's move on to another player in Bayern Munich. I'm liking these quick-fire options today in Douglas Costa, Henry, because it's a season-long loan, so we don't want to be too harsh, but he's been pretty much a non-event so far.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, I think back in the summer, Hansi Flick made it clear he wanted 4 wingers. They were obviously pursuing Callum Hudson-Odoi. They wanted that to be the kind of the 4th member of what would have been a stunning attack, wouldn't it? But they didn't get him in the end. They went for Douglas Costa, 30-year-old, has history at Bayern Munich. He's played there. He left the club 3 years ago to play for Juventus, but obviously he's come back on loan. And the interesting thing about Douglas Costa is he really hasn't actually played as much football in his career almost as you'd maybe imagine. I was just having a look, and he's only 3 times reached over 1,000 minutes in a league campaign. This is since his days with Shakhtar Donetsk, and the last time that happened was in 17-18. So he's sort of here and there in that whole time, and his record at Juventus kind of reflects that. 10 goals and 21 assists in 103 games. And for Bayern, it's just been really difficult for him to get into the starting lineup. He's only played 318 Bundesliga minutes. That's the 19th most in the squad. 3 starts with 8 off the bench. He was injury-free until mid-February when a hairline crack was found in his foot, so he's been sidelined since. But even so, that really isn't the kind of minutes he was suggesting, and I imagine there's been a lot of pressure to play Leroy Sane ahead of him as well. Jamal Musiala, he's obviously burst onto the scene. He's capable of playing on the wings. I even think Hansi Flick at times is happy to play Alphonso Davies a bit higher or push one of their kind of industrious fullbacks a bit further forward. So I don't know what the kind of necessity for wedging Douglas Costa has really been in for Hansi Flick's plans. And obviously his sort of scoring record has suffered as a result. 1 goal and 3 assists in 22 games for the club. His expected goals and expected assists per 90 has fallen just 0.28. That's 0.17 lower than any season in his career since 2014-15. So it's a difficult time for him, and it's interesting to kind of imagine what's going to happen next to Douglas Costa. Will he go back to Juventus and sort of just become another option there? I'll be very surprised considering the general kind of renovation that's going to have to take place in the squad. I was reading that perhaps Grêmio are moving to bring him back to Brazil, so that could be maybe a sensible move at 30 years old. Also, Tigres in Mexico, they're interested in potentially bringing him over there too. So I think that kind of maybe the direction that his career is heading in, maybe his time at the top is over. I still think Douglas Costa is a good player. Seemed highly unlikely he was going to get a ton of opportunities in this Bayern Munich side, but even so, I think you'd have expected a little bit more of this loan move nonetheless.
Yeah, I think it's a good shout from that was from Bradley Bissett on Twitter as well. And Bayern have used the loan market quite effectively in the last couple of years, while they've been sort of mainly focusing on their defence, really. I mean, you got Perisic in last year, they obviously got Coutinho in last year as well, and they had pretty sizable impacts. But Douglas Costa, as you say, hasn't really worked out in the same way. So shame for him, but I'm not quite sure where he goes as well. But yeah, great to hear some South American and Central American transfer rumours coming from Henry Hill there. But anyway, let's move on to another player in Germany, in Alexander Sorloth. Now, I suggested him on Twitter, along with Pjanic and Arturo, being like, guys, don't mention them. Obviously, they've been flops. And there was a lot of venom coming back at me, a lot of defenders of Sorloth. And, you know, perhaps I was being a little bit harsh, but I just thought, after signing for 20 million euros from Crystal Palace last summer for an initial 20 million euros, on close to deadline day, I think, as well, I was just expecting a little bit more, because obviously he'd spent the last 18 months on loan at Ghent and then Trabzonspor, and 2019-20 saw him really rip it up in Turkey. He scored 33 goals in 49 games, but he struggled really to have much of an impact at Leipzig so far, at least in quite limited minutes, just 4 goals in 29 games. But his Bundesliga stats, I suppose they're not too bad. 3 goals and 3 assists in 24 games in 10 starts. He's averaging 1.5 shots, 1.8 key passes. These aren't terrible numbers, but a lot of people were replying to my tweet being like, Nagelsmann hasn't really used him from the start in games. He's not really being used as a goal scorer either, which I was kind of confused about what he is using him as then. But RB Leipzig fans, tell me how he is being used and what you expect from him next season as well. I expect that he'll probably get more game time next year. I don't think Yusuf Poulsen's played that well this year, and Nagelsmann has tended to go with sort of a dynamic mix of those sort of tricky young forwards as well, the Nkunkus, the Dani Olmos, the Sabitzers coming up, the Angelino when he was fit as well. So maybe Sorloth just needs more game time. But I personally haven't been that impressed with him. But RB Leipzig fans and Bundesliga fans, let me know if I'm wrong there. McCubs, let's go to, just before we wrap up this section pretty much, let's talk about a player in at Atletico Madrid even, in Lucas Torreira, suggested by @DMSelect24, because it's been a really difficult year for him on and off the pitch, and for personal reasons too.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we must first say that our condolences go out to him after he lost his mother recently. Really sad news there for Lucas Torreira. Apparently he now wants to return to South America and join Boca Juniors to be closer to his family. I think that's quite understandable considering what he's going through at the moment and how far. I think with those kind of things, I think it obviously kind of illustrates or kind of exacerbates just how far away you are from home when those kind of things happen. So thoughts go out to him there. But he has had a pretty disappointing time at Atletico Madrid since moving there last summer. Obviously, kind of came kind of as part of that exchange with them with the Thomas Partey deal, and I think at the time most people kind of agreed that Arsenal had got the kind of upgrade in that position. Although he had been incredibly impressive in his Serie A days, hadn't he? Lucas Torreira was very impressive actually in his first season at Arsenal as well. But he kind of seemed like the sort of player that Atleti could really do. Obviously, he's very tough tackling. He's loves to harry players. Seemed like he could have been a bit of a dynamo in that midfield. Simeone just hasn't really used him, has he? Only 413 La Liga minutes. Despite being fully fit since the end of November. He ranks 18th in the squad for game time in total. That midfield now, of Koke, Saul and Thomas Lemar have really kind of, has really been solidified now. Behind them, he's fighting it out with Kondogbia and Herrera for that extra place. And, they've only been given 10 league starts between them this term. He entered what was a very congested central midfield, especially when you factor in the fact that Thomas Lemar has been used there more, and which considering they sold Partey in the summer is pretty mad. But also if they don't get this La Liga title wrapped up, then that may be considered a factor. I think essentially Simeone just hasn't used him enough, has he? And it's just been a shame to see, because I think we did expect at least to see a bit of an uptick from him this term, but he just hasn't really been given a chance. Yeah, no, it's been a really difficult campaign for him, and as McCubs so aptly put, condolences to him and his family. Let's go over to one Premier League signing, Henry Hill, in Nelson Semedo, because I know you are a personal, if you don't like Vinicius Junior, you don't like Nelson Semedo, or particularly, obviously the player, not the person, but you haven't been impressed with Nelson Semedo this year, have you?
It's not so much that I'm not impressed with Nelson Semedo. I'm not impressed with the decision to pay an initial 30 million euros for him. I think there's almost about 7 million euros in add-ons there, so he could be a hugely expensive signing, and I don't think any of us quite understood it at the time when Wolves agreed to pay that. I think that relationship with Mendes maybe needs a bit of reassessing after the kind of summer outlay, especially which went on Fabio Silva as well. 40 million euros for an untested teenager up front. Another really tricky one. But anyway, back to Semedo. 27 Premier League games. To be fair to me, he's played a lot of minutes this season, but maybe that even worsens the argument. 0 goals, 1 assist, 0.8 shots and 0.6 key passes. Okay, fine. 1.9 dribbles and actually 3.7 tackles and interceptions per 90 is okay, but there are so many errors to his game. I don't remember a game I've watched him where I thought this guy is a world-class right-back, because really for that kind of money, you're looking for something pretty exceptional to come into there, and I can't, for the love of me, see how he's been an upgrade on Matt Doherty, certainly, in that position. I don't blame the player at all. I just don't understand what compelled them to pay that kind of price for him. I think we saw that even against Bayern Munich in that kind of humiliating 8-2 defeat last term. But I mean, Wolves have had a really weird year when it comes to transfers too. Willian Jose, he's been another sort of awful loan addition, hasn't he, up front? He really hasn't helped their situation, so I'm not sure he's scored yet for Wolves there. But I think out of all of them, just for the money paid, Nelson Semedo really does sort of take the biscuit on that front.
Yeah, it's been a really difficult campaign for Wolves in their fullback areas in particular. I mean, Johnny's been injured for much of the campaign. Nelson Semedo nowhere near Doherty's level from last year. Dama Traore got his first assist, I think, the other day against West Ham. First assist in close to 40 games. So it's not been ideal for Wolves by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, honourable mentions in this section to Hwang Hee-chan. Not been a great campaign for him. A lot of people saying Shane Duffy as well, but I didn't really want to have a section about Celtic. But yeah, he's been terrible. Mauro Icardi maybe slightly underwhelming at PSG. Looks like he might be sold this summer if you believe what you read in the papers at least. Kolarov, Vedat Mariki, Felipe Anderson, who is just not featuring for FC Porto, which is really pretty damning. But guys, we want to hear from you. We've given you our selections, but which of these do you think was the worst signing of the season? Let us know in the comments down below, and let's move on to our big match preview. So this weekend, Atalanta take on Fiorentina. I don't actually know why I really included that. That's not that big a game, especially with Fiorentina being so average now. But anyway, Stuttgart host Borussia Dortmund. Montpellier play Marseille. But the biggest game of the weekend, guys, of course you knew it was coming. It's El Bloody Clasico, Saturday night at 8 p.m. Real Madrid play host to Barcelona. Third versus second, currently separated by just 2 points, and both of them have the momentum in this title race over Atletico Madrid at least. But McCubs, let's kick off with the host Real Madrid, because a supremely exceptional performance against Liverpool in midweek, and their league form has been excellent.
Yeah, they've just been really effective, haven't they, recently? Obviously, that Liverpool game was really impressive. They've won 7 of their last 9 league matches. They've scored 16 in that time and conceded just 5. Obviously, their defence has really come on since the turn of the year, despite Ramos being missing for so much of the season. Liverpool on Tuesday night was fantastic, wasn't it? 2 goals from Vinicius, like we were talking about earlier. Henry was very pleased about that, and another from Asensio, who's also been on fire himself. They completely dominated, didn't they? 16 shots and 7 on target to Liverpool's 7 and 1. XG had it at 1.9 to 0.8 in their favour, which, considering that they did let Liverpool have a lot of the ball, especially in that first half, just goes to show how intelligent they have been in terms of managing games recently. They've won 14 of their last 19 league games. They've drawn 4 and lost just 1, which was that 2-1 home defeat to Levante at the end of January, when there was a little bit of a speculation over whether Zidane had kind of lost his way with this team. Obviously, that came around the same time that they went out of the Copa to Alcoyón. Is it Alcoyón? I think that's how you pronounce it. Forgive me if I got that one wrong. But having been 7 points behind Atleti after 11 games in what was a really poor start to that season, they're now just 3 behind them. And like you say, Dukes, the momentum is really with them and Barca, and this is the most I've looked forward to a Clasico in quite a while, because at the start of the season, both Barcelona and Real didn't look great. Real looked really bad defensively. Barca, I think, looked pretty bad all over the pitch, didn't they? Messi was yet to even find any meaningful form by that point in October. So I can't remember the last time that between 2 Clasico meetings that so much has changed. Both teams just look so much better all over right now. Real Madrid, in terms of their kind of league stats, they rank 2nd for shots per game with 14.2, which is kind of what you'd expect. They actually rank 6th for shots against with 9.2, which is a bit less than their defence hasn't been quite as amazing as it was last season, but they still have generated the 2nd most expected points behind Barcelona. Atleti actually ranks 6th in that regard. Obviously, they've won a lot of games through Luis Suarez just being on fire in front of goal, haven't they? As for the players, I think we do need to shout out Asensio and Vinicius, because they have been very good recently. Asensio in particular, I think, has been crucial. Obviously, took both goals incredibly well in the last week, obviously against Liverpool on Tuesday night and against Eibar on the weekend. He scored in his last 4 appearances. Obviously, that included Atalanta in the last 16 as well, which is as many goals as he scored in his previous 41 matches. Obviously, struggled with injury, hasn't really been used an awful lot by Zidane, or hasn't had the full trust of him until recently, but he's really taking his chance now, and it's great to see, because this is a player who we talked about as one of the best young forwards in Europe when he was coming through, and yeah, he started to pick up that kind of that electrifying form once again. He looks a lot more confident, he looks a lot more sharp, so yeah, hopefully we see him continue to improve his game. And yeah, Vinicius, magnificent against Liverpool, wasn't he? He scored 6 and assisted 6 in 37 games this season. I think that's been bumped up a lot by his recent form. And yeah, in the Champions League in particular, he's been really good. 4.1 dribbles, 4.5 shot creating actions per 90. So yeah, he has shown that he can do it on the biggest stage, and I think like Henry was alluding to, I think we're just yet to see him do it week in, week out for like a month, 2-month period. And I think once we see that, I think we'll have a better idea of what his Real Madrid career is going to look like. And because yeah, he's not been without his critics. I think I've even suggested in a recent scout report that if Real Madrid really want to upgrade that forward line, then Vinicius is their most sellable asset. I think he's still valued at around 70 million euros by the Football Observatory. So I kind of stick by that as well. If they really do want to fund a move for one of the elite attackers in Europe, namely Mbappe or Haaland, and it is possible to do so by raising money, then I think Vinicius would be the guy to sell. But nevertheless, I think he's clearly out to prove his critics wrong. He has the kind of swagger of a Real Madrid player without necessarily having the kind of production to back it up just yet. But clearly he's a very, very confident forward. And yeah, it would be great to see him contribute in this game. And as for the back line, which has been much improved, this is going to be obviously a massive test for Militao and Nacho, isn't it? Because you've usually seen at least one of Ramos or Varane in there. But they passed the test against Liverpool, didn't they? In particular, Militao was really impressive. He registered 4 tackles and interceptions. He won 4 aerial duels. Was pretty comfortable on the ball as well. And yeah, there's been question marks around him, but obviously he's still very young. And alongside Nacho, who has been excellent this season, coming in for Sergio Ramos, they looked pretty solid. So I think that will be the main area of worry for Real Madrid. But if they can put in the same kind of performance that they did against Liverpool, then I think they can be fairly confident that they'll reduce Barcelona to less than 2 goals. But I think that still is the area which I'd be concerned with, because I think the midfield has been really, really solid. Obviously, Modric is back in fantastic form, isn't he? Kroos has been excellent all season, playing in that slightly deeper role. So I think Real Madrid can probably be fairly confident that they'll dominate things in the centre of the park in that sense, because I think I still have question marks over that Barcelona midfield, even with Frankie de Jong playing so well in that kind of back 3. I think Pedri remains an amazing talent, but defensively I'm not sure he can be entrusted to hold things down alongside Sergi Busquets. So I think Real Madrid can probably be confident, like I said, of Modric and Kroos running things there. But yeah, I think that back line will face a massive test with the likes of Messi and Ousmane Dembele in such good form. Going forward, Real Madrid have a pretty tough run in. So I think this game is massively important for them. Obviously, they go on to play Real Betis, who are in 5th, Sevilla, who are in 4th. Also come up against Athletic Club and Villarreal. So not an easy run in for them. So I think victory is vital here for them, and I think it's going to be a really, really tight game.
Yeah, it's going to be vitally important. I think it's important that you call out the midfield there as well. I read a really interesting article by Michael Cox, the tactics writer, who was basically suggesting that, really interestingly, Zidane this year has used his midfield 3 in a completely atypical way that you'd expect. Casemiro's been pushing forward, and it's been Kroos and Modric who have been dropping deeper, using them as deep lying playmakers, and using Casemiro's running power, his pressing, and his ability to break into the box. And he's been one of Real Madrid's key scorers this year, Casemiro. We've seen him pop up, not least in the Champions League, with numerous headed goals, etc. So that'll be one to watch this weekend. But Henry, let's move on to Barcelona, because you're writing a scout report which is coming out this weekend on how Koeman has turned it around, because it has been a magnificent recovery from him and the side.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I mean, back in February, they lost to Cadiz, and he basically said it was unlikely that they would win anything with the current squad that he's got. But how they've turned things around. They've won 16 of their last 19 games, drawing 3, taking 51 points out of a possible 57. That's massive. That's 8 more than the next best Real Madrid in that period. And to put it into context, Manchester City have taken 50 points from their last 19 games. So they really are a team in form, and Koeman, to be fair to him, he's getting the best out of a lot of their players there. We talked a lot about Asensio just there, kind of rejuvenated spirit. Well, I think Ousmane Dembele, on the other side of the coin, he's finally seems to be getting a lot of consistent run of form out of the 23-year-old. He scored 5 goals in his last 9 games for club and country. In La Liga, he's averaging 2 shots, 1.9 key passes, and 3.2 dribbles per 90. I think if his finishing could just improve a little bit, I think that's probably the next step in his game. As we saw against PSG, if he could just improve and calm down maybe in front of goal, then he could start to finally turn into a really brilliant player. And his fitness is back. He's been able to feature in 15 straight La Liga games. Only lasted more than 7 once since signing for August in 2017. That was 11 in 18-19. So yeah, it looks like Ousmane Dembele could be a big factor in this game. And I think really that's part of the Barcelona rejuvenation, is that goals are coming from other parts of the team. Last season, Lionel Messi was almost single-handedly being relied upon for goals. Obviously Suarez was helping out as well, but Messi was really having to lead the charge. Now they've got goals kind of coming from all over the pitch as well. I mean, even Trincão's popped up with a few here and there. Griezmann actually is playing fairly consistently, still maybe not at the goal-scoring levels that people are imagining of him, but he's still a sort of consistent performer within that Barcelona side. And they've got a real kind of sense of spirit about them. They've been able to come back into games. I think they had a really good result against Sevilla, where they're kind of digging out victories, which perhaps in the past they weren't able to. And then look at this recent game against Real Valladolid. They were playing against 10 men. They had 25 shots with 10 on target. And it would have been massive if they'd led up with those 3 points, especially as XG had it at 1.7 to 0.4. But they managed to get the job done. They've scored 17 more goals than anyone else. In Spain, only Bayern Munich have scored more in Europe. They take 15.7 shots per game. That's the most in Spain too. But also it's defensively that they've really shored up. They've only conceded 2 goals in the last 6 league games, and only are facing 8.2 shots per game. These are all improvements on last season. That's best in Spain, level with Real Sociedad, who, by the way, I think we should just give a quick shout out to. Congratulations to Real Sociedad on winning that Copa del Rey. First trophy in 34 years. Really brilliant result. Hopefully we'll maybe touch upon it later on the season when we do a bit of a review. But that is massive for them. So huge congratulations. And it's Athletic Bilbao on the 17th. We'll maybe talk about it next week. But don't want to be on the back of 2 cup final defeats in as many weeks. But yeah, back to Barcelona. It's interesting what you said, McCubs, about the midfield, because I kind of disagree. I think Busquets is still sort of solid and as brilliant as ever in the midfield there. Frenkie de Jong is looking like a really brilliant player. He's the most touches in La Liga this year at the moment. Only Messi has found more. Has successfully found his pass target more than de Jong, and I think he leads for sort of progressive passes as well. He's really become that orchestrator, and he diffuses that pressure in front of the defence incredibly well for Barcelona. So I think really impressive stuff from Frenkie de Jong. And actually Pedri leads Barcelona's side for pressures consistently. He's ahead of Busquets in that regard. So depending on whether or not Koeman plays a 2-3-1 or a 4-3-3, Pedri, he will be busy and he'll be there to shut down that midfield of Real Madrid and really try and isolate what is their main kind of attacking unit. But we've got 2 great sides with 2 sort of passing sides here. So this is what's going to be quite an interesting kind of coming together. And actually the defence as well. Gerard Piqué's been missing for most of this season, but Koeman's been brilliant at bringing some of the best out of some of this younger generation. I think Oscar Mingueza has almost come from nowhere to be a really regular feature in that defence. And Ronald Araujo as well. He's growing in stature next to Clement Longley at the back. And Titi, I think, is certainly finished at the club now. And it looks like PK, he's 34 years old now. I can't see really a way back for PK as a regular player, especially if these kind of youngsters continue to show that they are capable of standing up and being counted for in a Barcelona shirt. So I think that's should be a hugely exciting factor for that Barcelona side too. And yeah, they're playing really good football at the moment. They're running hot. They're digging out victories when it matters, and I think that's huge. And like you said, this is about as an exciting an El Clasico as I can really remember, and certainly not what we expected as well. And let's just not forget Lionel Messi. He is playing incredibly well once more. Koeman's done brilliantly to kind of get him back on board with the project, and God, who knows where he'll go this summer. I'm exhausted already thinking about having to talk about that all summer. But against Valladolid, that was just the 5th time since the 19th of December that he hasn't contributed a goal. He scored 4 more than anyone else. He's got 23 this season, and only Iago Aspas has assisted more than his 8. So he is in amazing form too. But yeah, Barcelona, if they can win this game and really put pressure on Atletico Madrid, who look like they will give it up if they can sort of be forced, and then they'll go into that Copa del Rey final of Athletic Club as well. So they've got a really exciting few weeks coming up to see what it could turn out to be a real grandstand finish for them this season, and certainly not what we were expecting at the start of the year.
Yeah, and they'll be fresher as well, which I think could be a massive factor. Obviously, Real Madrid played on Tuesday. Barcelona have had the week off. I think that is quite a big factor, and also, both sides have some issues injury-wise, but you feel like Real Madrid's maybe slightly larger. Hazard's obviously out, as he always is. Carvajal, Ramos, Varane. These are big names missing, and of those, Carvajal might be back, but he probably won't start. I thought Lucas Vazquez was actually excellent against Sadio Mane and Diogo Jota during the clash on Tuesday night as well. Barcelona's injuries, Ansu Fati obviously, Coutinho, Sergio Roberto and Piqué are all out. Sergio Roberto might apparently make the bench. Apparently in this game, Messi, Longley and De Jong are at the risk of suspension as well, so they've timed that well. If they pick up a yellow, they'll miss the next league game, but they are available for El Clasico. Real Madrid have won their last 2 meetings, 5-1 on aggregate in those games, but before that they'd only won 2 of their previous 12 matches with 6 defeats in that time. So recent form with Real Madrid, but if you stretch that back a few years, it's definitely been Barcelona's game. I'm going with 1-1, which I know won't satisfy a lot of people, but I think it really just depends on how well Militao and Nacho, continue that form from Tuesday. I thought they were excellent, limited Liverpool to effectively nothing. I thought they were really, really impressive, but it's whether they can do that against the Griezmanns and Dembele's and Messi's of this world. So I'm going with 1-1. McCubs, what's your prediction?
God, I was gonna go for a draw as well, maybe 2-2. Yeah, I think it's going to be a big game for Frankie de Jong as well, because I do think against Valladolid, although, yeah, like Henry was saying, I think Pedri offers a lot of energy in that midfield and pressing. Like, they did let them through quite a lot. We're getting dribbled past quite a lot by what's a relatively mediocre side. So I do think they do need to shore up a bit, and I think they will approach this game in a more defensive manner than maybe they have in the past. But yeah, also yeah, Lucas Vazquez, massive game for him with Ousmane Dembele to deal with. So God, yeah, I just feel like they'll both be able to get at their vulnerabilities. In the kind of form that they're in. So yeah, I think 2-2. Another very boring shout, but I think it will make ultimately the La Liga title race a bit more interesting if they draw this game, because that means that Atleti, I think, will still drop points. I think there's going to be more drama to come, obviously, in the coming weeks.
Oh, it's going to be so good. Absolutely box office. Henry, what's your prediction?
Oof. Well, I got the Bayern one correct last week. That was pretty exciting. I think it's the first one I've got actually spot on in quite a while. But I'm going to go 2-1 Real Madrid. I've just been really impressed with them recently. I think Benzema is just playing exceptionally well, and just that plethora of experience, and Kroos and Modric coming good just at the right time. But honestly, I would not be shocked at all. I think a draw is the fair shout. I wouldn't be shocked at all if Barcelona do pull off a victory as well. But it's just really exciting that this game, there's so much in for it and a lot to look forward to. So yeah, I'll definitely be tuning in.
I love that. Henry does a 10-minute section on Barcelona and then stabs them in the back with a Real Madrid shout. Brilliant stuff. It'll be interesting as well, one final thing, to see whether Fede Valverde features. He obviously played exceptionally well in the El Clasico at the Nou Camp earlier this season, getting a goal in that as well. So maybe he'll have an impact from the bench. He's always got fantastic legs and dynamism. So guys, get your score predictions in for El Clasico in the comments down below. And let's move on very quickly to a quickfire question. Our quickfire question comes in from Stuart A. Kirk. Thank you very much, Stuart, for getting involved once again. He said, how do UEFA get rid of the awful decision-making we saw during the Man City versus Dortmund game? I believe he's talking about the Jude Bellingham moment, Henry. I mean, it was a pretty appalling decision.
I mean, I don't know if there's explicitly anything UEFA can do other than give that referee a bit of a slap on the wrists, really. I mean, it's his fault at the end of the day. He should have known better. I'm not quite sure what the regulations are. If essentially what happened is he thought it was a foul, so he called a foul, and it wasn't a foul. So I mean, it's just a really poor decision from the referee. I'm not sure if there's anything explicitly UEFA can do other than maybe suggest that play on in a situation like that, play on, and then review it later on, a little bit like they do with the offside rule. But yeah, I just think it's just I wouldn't get too hung up on sort of rewriting the rule book on this one. I just think it is just a really, really bad individual error from the referee, and I'm sure he'll feel really bad about it too. Let's not make no mistake about that. It's not easy being a ref.
No, it's certainly not. It's a job few would envy. I mean, McCubs, it's just frustrating when, you know, VAR comes in for so much stick, but ultimately it's human errors that cost, you know, sides in this game, and yet the system will get criticised.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. Without VAR, this decision just would have been seen as a very bad decision, and there wouldn't have been an awful lot. Like it wouldn't have, like, you know, gone on much more in terms of the conversation, at least. Whereas, in the past, like, I mean, we'd see those kind of decisions happen all the time, and people would just take them. But no, it was particularly bad. I think even. In some ways, even without VAR, you know, like, he had a very good view of it, and you still can't really see why he would have given it, because it was clear that he got the ball first. I don't know, it's really difficult. I think also goalkeepers tend to be a little bit more protected in those situations, don't they? I think if that happens anywhere else on the pitch, that doesn't get blown. So I think that's something that referees, I think, you know, perhaps you know, in general, don't kind of consider enough. But yeah, I think ultimately I agree with Henry. I don't think we, you know, when we kind of rewrite the rules for certain situations after kind of freak incidences like that, I don't think it really helps anyone. So yeah, but equally, yeah, I think basically what the ref should have done was kind of applied that same concept that they have with the offside rule of let's see what happens here and then we can review it. Rather than blowing too quickly. Yeah, blowing the whistle was a massive mistake. I'll also say I thought Ederson was quite clever in the situation in that he made it look... He went down as if there'd definitely been contact, and quite a lot of contact as well. Obviously, it's slightly, you know, gamesmanship, you know, verging on cheating. And it wasn't the only incident of that in the game as well. Rodri went down clutching his face for that penalty, which then got overturned, which hadn't touched his face. So, you know, the dark arts were at play at the Etihad. But I'm just gutted for Jude Bellingham. I feel like his performance deserved a goal. He's been really unlucky in lots of the Champions League games this year. I think he should have had, you know, a few more goals to his name, and 2 away goals at Man City with Erling Haaland to play at the Westfalenstadion in the home leg as well. You know, you've got a real chance then, whereas now it looks like it's going to be such a difficult task for Dortmund to go through of that tie. But, you know, stranger things have happened, and Man City have a strange way of bottling things when the heat turns on in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. So I'm not saying that tie is over. But guys, that is all we've got time for on Continental Club for this week. I hope you've enjoyed the show, our discussion on worst signings, El Clasico, and that atrocious decision at the Etihad on Tuesday night. Henry, if they've enjoyed this, what should they go and watch now? Yeah, like I said, we've got the Barcelona scout report coming out, so looking a bit more in depth at how exactly Koeman has changed the system there as well. We've also had our UCL reviews all weekend. A EFD explained on why France produces so much talent. We saw another masterclass
from Kylian Mbappe. Dougie, I think excellent work from you, illuminating just how the Paris metropolitan area is producing so many amazing footballers.
Perfect. Anything from you, McCubs?
Yeah, go and check out the podcast channel. I think you were on it this week. Were you with
I think it was Joe, actually.
Oh, was it Joe? On the biggest failures this season. So go and check that out. And yeah, go and subscribe to the podcast.
Perfect. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Really enjoyed today's show. We'll catch you next time. Bye.